My name's Lorraine Parker, 74 years old, from a little ranch house outside Ocala, Florida. If you've ever buried the love of your life and thought the worst was behind you, listen close. Because 1 week after my husband's funeral, my own son looked me in the eye and screamed, "You're next, Mama." That moment didn't come out of nowhere. It began with a phone call from my credit union, a voice too polite to panic. "Miss Lorraine," she said, "we just need to confirm a cash withdrawal, $9,800, authorized by your caregiver." Only, I don't have a caregiver, just my son, Caleb, and his wife, Shauna, the kind of girl who smiles while she moves your things around. A few days later, my printer coughed out a piece of paper I didn't ask for. Power of attorney. My name at the top, my signature at the bottom. Only it wasn't my handwriting. It looked like a stranger railing my dress. That was the day I stopped calling it grief and started calling it a plan. Because someone in my own house was trying to erase me one signature at a time. And before they were finished, they were about to learn something I'd spent 74 years perfecting. I may be old, but I'm not easy to steal from. Caleb came home the week after the funeral. He said, "I'll keep an eye on you, Mama." And he carried my grocery bags in like a man paying a debt. He brought along Shona, a girl with shell-pink nails and hair that never moved in the wind. She called me Miss Lorraine at first, and she rearranged my spice rack until the cumin hid behind the cinnamon, and I got mad at the nutmeg for existing. But she carried the laundry basket from the garage without breathing hard, and she told me to sit while she scrubbed the sink, and I am not too proud to admit that help felt like a blanket over my knees. For the first month, it was honey. Caleb mowed the yard and patched a spot in the ceiling that we'd been lying to ourselves about. Shauna wiped my glasses with the corner of her shirt every time I tilted my head to read a label. We ate meatloaf on Wednesdays at the Silver Spur Diner, and the waitress with the dimple brought extra gravy without my asking and called me Sugar like we'd known each other since VBS in '58. On Fridays, we took the long way home so we could drive past the horses and argue about which one had the shiniest tail. I caught myself thinking maybe the Lord had timed Ray's leaving on a day when our boy could come home, as if grief and comfort might check each other's watches. Then the little things began. The credit union called on a Monday. The head teller, Patty, said, "Miss Lorraine, I'm sorry to bother you, but we just need to verify a cash withdrawal, $9,800. We figured we shouldn't stall your caregiver." "My what?" "Your caregiver," she said, and you could hear the question mark on the end of it. "I'm still driving myself to Aldi for avocados, and if I have a caregiver, ma'am, she must be hiding in the freezer behind the squirrel meat I don't have." Patty apologized, blamed some note on my account that must have sprouted on its own, and asked me to bring my ID by when I had a minute to confirm signatures. I hung up and stared at my own hands for a while. The left one shakes when I'm tired. The right still writes the L in my name like a ribbon. That night, Caleb came in from the backyard with the smell of gasoline and cut grass on his shirt. He kissed my forehead and said, "Don't get worked up about the bank, Mama. It's just paperwork." "Paperwork signed by who?" I asked. He smiled thin and shiny, like a nickel flashing in the sun. He said, "By the family. You know I handle things now." The printer coughed 3 days later. I hadn't sent it a thing. It spit out a sheet and chirped to itself like a guilty bird. When I picked it up, my stomach fell straight through the floorboards. A power of attorney form. neat as Sunday school. My name typed at the top, my signature at the bottom. Only it wasn't my signature. My L loops like I'm tying a bow on a gift. This L snapped off mean. It looked like a stranger wearing my dress. "Shauna?" I said. "Did you print something?" She patted in with a dish towel over her shoulder. "Oh gosh, maybe the Wi-Fi did a thing," she said, her voice careful as a cat on a wet porch. "Wi-Fi did a thing," I repeated, polite as a fork. I put the paper in the drawer with the birthday candles and the warranty for a toaster we no longer owned, and I sat on the edge of my bed until my knees turned to buzzing. Without thinking, I pulled down Ray's old gator sweatshirt from the hook on the closet door and put it on. It still smelled like the shop and the bar soap he insisted on using, even when I bought him gel that promised to make him feel like a forest. You don't want to see what you see. Your brain tries to set out tea and make small talk while your gut hollers from the yard. But my gut learned to speak in '64, and that nickel-shine smile kept winking at me from the kitchen at odd hours, and the printer didn't own a soul for the Wi-Fi to borrow. The things that came next arrived like ants at a picnic. Individually ridiculous, together a swarm. Shauna began answering my phone. "Miss Lorraine's resting," she'd tell folks, like she tucked me down for kindergarten nap when I'd be sitting on the couch with the crossword and a bowl of grapes. The church ladies from First Baptist showed up with casseroles on a Tuesday, but the doorbell camera told them, "We're all set, thanks," in Caleb's voice, while I was in the shower humming Blessed Assurance. I found the title missing from my lockbox. Shauna said, "We put it somewhere safer." The somewhere safer turned out to be a title loan office wedged between a vape shop and a nail salon where all the chairs looked the same name as hers. Caleb stayed up late, not with the glow of a book, the way he used to fall asleep reading Ray's old Chilton manuals, but with the blue shine of screens. I'd hear him whisper, "Just one more parlay," in a voice that made my baby boy sound like a man standing on a bridge pretending he was sightseeing. Sometimes he'd look at me and his face would soften, and I'd see my 8-year-old who cried when he caught a catfish because it bled. And sometimes he'd look at me and that nickel smile would slit across his mouth, and I'd feel like a bank teller hearing a pen click right before a bad check. At my next checkup, Shauna slid into the exam room like steam under a door. "Miss Lorraine is a little forgetful lately," she told the doctor, patting my hand like she'd borrowed it for a photo shoot. "We're taking such good care of her." The doctor looked at me over his glasses. My blood pressure was behaving. My A1C was better than the nurse's charting fingers expected. I still read the paper front to back, and I remember where I hid the good chocolate. He smiled the way people do when they want to believe you and the notes on their screen tell them not to. Shauna left humming. I called my neighbor Donna that afternoon, the one who walks her old beagle Gus past my mailbox every morning at 6 like she's training him for a parade. "Honey, when I asked you if you noticed anything odd, last week your boy told the prayer chain you had a nasty flu and not to bring casseroles. We were going to circle up and pray right on your porch." I haven't sneezed since February, and I looked down at my hands again like the truth might be written on my knuckles. That night I opened the printer because sometimes the place something came from tells you who brought it. Under the cartridge tray, tucked in like a secret, I found what I didn't know I was looking for. Printed DocuSign emails with timestamps, a draft petition for temporary guardianship at the Marion County Courthouse, the kind of paper that can slip a woman's shoes off her own feet while telling her to sit and rest. It said I needed protection from elder confusion. Underneath, on a separate page, was a spreadsheet of projected winnings. The 2 pages leaned against each other like they'd been on a date. I didn't cry. I put the papers in a manila folder with 3 holes in the top from a long-gone Brad. I made tea, and I put on lipstick in case courage came when it saw me I'd tried. Then I did the one thing Daddy never learned to do. I told the truth to somebody who could help. The credit union sits in a strip where one end is a dentist and the other's a taco place that pretends it's not a little too proud of its salsa. I went at 9 when the doors open and fresh coffee makes the lobby smell like forgiveness. Patty, the head teller with a bun so tight it could hold a secret for a century, sat me in her little glass office and shut the door with 2 fingers. "Miss Lorraine," she said, "do you trust me?" I do, and felt the oddest float in my chest, like the floor had decided to hold me up a little longer. She looked at the papers until the air got heavy. Then she picked up her phone and said words like flag and hold and freeze, and every so often, "Bless her heart," in a tone that didn't ask God to bless anybody. Then she walked me 2 doors down to senior legal aid, where a lawyer so young she still wore ballet flats instead of sensible pumps drew up a revocation of power of attorney for the power I hadn't granted, a no trespass notice pending a hearing, and a list of numbers written like life preservers. Adult Protective Services, the non-emergency sheriff line, and the problem gambling hotline. "That one's for your son," she said gently, and then burned a copy of everything onto a little thumb drive and told me to keep it somewhere that wasn't my house. I stopped at Publix on my way home because frosting makes a kitchen look innocent. I baked a pan of cinnamon rolls from a can, wiped the counter twice, and spread the manila folder on the table like I was about to begin a craft. I checked my phone and made sure the voice recorder worked. It did. I put on Ray's sweatshirt and rolled the sleeves twice, because sleeves rolled equals business. Then I waited. Caleb came in at 6, smelling like the gas station on the corner that sells fried chicken and a warmer. "Hey, Mama," he said, flashing that nickel grin. "We're meeting a guy about some financial instruments after dinner." "Sit," I said. "There's a plate." He sat because I said it the way his elementary school principal used to, and men only unlearn so much. "When," I asked, calm as a church kitchen, "did I become a woman who can't sign her own name?" His jaw clicked. A muscle jumped like a frog at his temple. "Shauna said we should protect you, Mama. Scammers are out here running wild. You know how many old people get taken every day? Sometimes the scammers live in the guest room and eat my cinnamon rolls." Shauna had been quiet as a moth at a night porch light, but she found her voice then. "You can't do this, Lorraine. You're confused. You'll thank us later." "Bless your heart," I said, which in my language means the opposite of what you think. "I am not confused. I am careful. There's a difference." I put my phone on the table and tapped the red square. The kitchen clock hummed. A bird yelled from the live oak. Somebody's lawnmower coughed awake down the road and gave up. Caleb's hands shook. They left in a storm of small noises, keys scraping, drawers slamming, gravel muttering under tires. I locked the deadbolt Ray installed the year the hurricanes came close and texted Donna, "If you see a silver Honda circled twice, call me. Don't wave." The knock I expected came 2 days later from people with clipboards. Not police, not yet. Adult Protective Services and a deputy who stood in my living room like a coat rack learning to breathe. I made coffee because I was taught to offer it. I slid the manila folder across the table and watched women with pens do what women with pens do better than men with badges ever remember. We spent the next week shuffling papers like cards you're determined to deal fairly. APS opened a case. The credit union sat on anything it didn't trust. The lawyer from senior legal aid filed things with names so sensible they sounded from a different century. Affidavit, revocation, petition to dismiss. Donna signed a statement in her neat teacher hand testifying about doorbell cameras telling lies. Patty from the bank wrote a letter about my signature. I printed out every email in the printer's belly like I was cleaning out a bird's nest I hadn't asked for. I didn't sleep long stretches. You don't when the house you've lived in for 37 years turns into a stage where even the dust seems to be waiting on its cue.
On hearing day, we stood under the fluorescent hum of the county courthouse, second floor, past the drinking fountain that only works if you hold your mouth just right. Judge Anita Simmons wore readers on a chain and a face like every woman I ever loved best when I was standing in a kitchen I didn't own. The bailiff called my name, and I walked like my shoes were my own, and the floor had remembered it was not allowed to move. Caleb clutched a folder 2 sizes too big for the papers inside. Caleb didn't meet my eye. "Mrs. Parker," the judge said, "I see a petition for temporary guardianship, a power of attorney, and a title transfer in dispute. Do you consent to any of this?" "No, Your Honor," I said, each word like a step on a ladder. We sat. I handed over my stack, the emails, the voice recording, Patty's letter, Donna's note with Gus's paw print smudged in the margin because he episodes and caregiver burden. She said protect. The judge took off her glasses and cleaned them slow while she listened, the way women clean when they're thinking whether to be merciful or mighty. She turned to me. "Mrs. Parker, do you manage your medications?" "Yes, ma'am." "Your bills?" "With auto pay where it makes sense, and I still clip coupons with my morning coffee, and I don't apologize for it." A corner of her mouth moved. "And you believe your son has a gambling problem?" "I believe my son is drowning," I said, and let myself say the whole sentence, "and I won't let him pull me under." A hush settled like dust when the air conditioner stops. The judge put on her glasses and spoke like a yardstick. Petition denied. Forged POA void. Title loan flagged for fraud review. Temporary protective order for my address. "Mr. Parker," and Caleb finally looked at her, "if you want your mother's trust back, you'll start by showing up where help is offered." Outside the courthouse, the sky was so blue it hurt to look. Caleb stood with his hands in his pockets the way boys do when they know pockets won't save them. He tried to smile, not the nickel grin, something cracked and human. "Mama," he said, voice gone small, "I messed up." "You did, and I love you too much to let you keep messing up." I handed him a list. Gamblers Anonymous with a meeting circled at the church on 14th Street. A counselor's card and ink that looked like it did pull-ups. Rules I'd written in my best pen. No access to my accounts. No overnights in my house. If you want to see me, we do breakfast at Waffle House with Donna sitting 2 booths over pretending she's grading papers. He nodded. He cried. I cried with him because setting a boundary feels like you're breaking something and saving something at the same time. It didn't get tidy the next day. Life never thanks you that quick. Shauna peeled off when the money turned off, fast as a lizard under a fence, and the quiet that came behind her was like opening a window after frying onions. Caleb relapsed once. He called me from a church parking lot at midnight and said, "I'm choosing the meeting, Mama." And that time he went, and he kept going. He brought me his first white chip like it was a communion wafer, and I tucked it behind the photo of Ray in my wallet and told him I'd hold it until he held a stack.
I moved to Sunrise Palms, a 55-plus community with a shuffleboard court that turns fierce on Friday nights, and a book club that argues kindly about whether the high school sweetheart should marry the man who went to war or the one who stayed in Motor Mama's yard. My little rental looks into a pond where a heron visits at 5:20 every evening and stands like a question mark while the sky turns pink. Patty from the bank brought me a fern from my porch. Donna taught me how to text in full sentences. I put Ray's gator sweatshirt on a hook by the door where my hand can find it without thinking, the way you find the light switch in a room you've lived in long enough to find anything with your eyes closed. Caleb started coming to breakfast on Saturdays. We sit at the corner booth in Waffle House because the corner gives a man with a twitchy heart a place to look at the door without looking like he's looking. He orders the All-Star and eats the bacon first, like he did when he was 9, and the world felt smaller and safer, and every problem could be fixed with a nap or a new pencil. The waitress calls me honey and adds extra butter without asking because she read my soul. And Caleb tells me about delivering auto parts and how the man at the shop knows his name now. Every few weeks, he says he can't come because he's got a meeting at the time we'd agreed. And I tell him that's fine. And I mean it. I want my boy on a folding chair under fluorescent lights telling the truth into a room that nods back like a mirror. Hurricane season came and went, and we didn't need our shutters. But Caleb came anyway and held the ladder while I pretended I might still climb it. You take the small ones, I said, and leave the big ones to the men who lift things for a living. He laughed like a man who remembered his shoulders belonged to him. He fixed the broken latch on my gate and found the missing Phillips head in the grass and didn't pocket it. He took the trash out without my telling him and texted me a picture of his rent receipts because he knows proof is kindness now. Christmas at Sunrise Palms looked like a Hallmark movie produced on a limited budget and no shame. The HOA hired a high school quartet to sing carols that threatened to break my heart. We did a cookie swap, and I brought the sugar cookies from Publix with the frosting that tastes like childhood. Donna gave me an ornament that says, "Brave looks good on you." And I hung it next to the paper angel Caleb made in second grade that has kept its glitter longer than seems appropriate. After midnight service, I stood on my porch in my robe with the fern looking at me like it understood, and I told Ray out loud that I was doing okay. Maybe even better than that some days. I wish I could hand you an ending that ties itself in a bow so pretty you'd clap. Life doesn't do that. It hands you a ball of twine and says, "Here, make something." Caleb is 9 months clean as I say this out loud. He goes to his meetings and he sits at the back because he's still learning that being seen won't kill him. He sends me pictures of his dinner sometimes, bad lighting and all, like the act of eating something he bought himself as a small parade he's inviting me to. We still talk about the bad nights. We don't pretend. He knows my door is locked at night and my accounts are mine, and that if I see that nickel smile, I will call people with clipboards before I argue with a grin. He knows I love him. He's learning that love with rules is still love. Every so often, on a slow afternoon, I drive out past the horse farms and I let the sight of their muscles and calm eyes smooth me down from the inside. I think about my daddy's hat and the track and how some streaks don't bend, they break. I think about Ray humming in the shop with grease up to his wrists and how love can look like a man laying out your tools and wiping them off before he leaves you alone with a job you can do. I think about that printer, how it coughed when it lied, and I thank the Lord for cheap plastic and a timing that saved my name. You might be sitting there with a string of red flags you've been calling Christmas lights because your heart wanted a holiday. You might be listening with your hand on the jar you keep cash in, or on the drawer where you think your title is safe, or on the phone that has learned to ring for everything except the thing you want. If that's you, hear me like I'm your neighbor leaning over your fence to hand you back a pie plate. Love does not mean saying yes until you disappear. Love tells the truth. Love signs its own checks. Love locks its doors at night and still leaves the porch light on, just in case someone who once knew the way home needs to see the shape of it again. I'm not a judge. I'm not a saint. I'm a woman who cooks too much food and cries in parking lots and wears her dead husband's sweatshirt on days when courage feels like a grocery list. But I set a boundary and did not die of it. I followed a paper trail where it led and did not get lost. I asked for help and did not drown in the asking. If any of that sounds like a map you could use, take it. copy it in your own handwriting. Fold it into your Bible or your junk drawer or the zipped pocket of your purse and pull it out when you hear the printer cough for no good reason. Last week, Caleb met me at Cracker Barrel. He was early. He stood when I walked in, and he looked like a man whose bones weigh what they should, not like someone carrying a secret heavier than his body. He said, "Mom, can we try Saturdays and Tuesdays? My boss switched my route." I said yes, because I could. He paid for his chicken and dumplings, and then, this is what got me. He pushed the receipt across the table for me to see, and not because I asked. He's not fixed. Neither am I. But he's trying. So am I. We are, on most days, beginning again. If you've listened this far, thank you. Go pour yourself something warm and sweet, pet your dog for me, text your neighbor if you need a witness. And if the people who mean well, more than they do well, tell you you're being unkind for drawing a line, nod and draw it straighter. You can be your child's mother without being his mattress. You can be gentle without being gullible. You can leave your porch light on and still lock the door. As Ray would say, when the engine finally catches after a winter too long, there she is. There she is.
They thought they were taking my life one signature at a time. But the truth is, I signed something they never saw. I signed my own boundary. And when I did, I didn't lose a son. I found my strength. Today, my accounts are mine. My door locks at night, and my porch light still burns for the boy who's learning to come home honest. Caleb brings breakfast on Saturdays, and sometimes he just sits quiet, letting the coffee steam between us like a truce. If you're watching this and somebody you love is slowly rewriting your story, stop them. You can love and still say no. You can forgive without forgetting. You can leave the light on and still lock the door. Because survival isn't revenge. It's proof that you're still the author of your own name.